Hi everyone, and welcome back to Book Review, a YouTube channel where I review books. A book. Anyway, the book I'm reviewing today is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by Kye Emond. This book revolves around the idea of standing up for yourself and others, and is told through the lens of a hallucinating patient in a dictatorial mental asylum. It describes the terrible lives of the patients who live under constant fear of the tyrannical nurse, and how those lives are changed for the better when a newcomer stands up to her. This story takes place in the 1960s, when mental asylums were going out of style. Despite this, a few horrifying practices were still being commonly used in the remaining psychiatric wards. An example of this is lobotomy, a process in which large metal rods are inserted into your brain and wiggled around in order to damage bad connections. Another example, referenced throughout the book as the shock shop, is electroshock therapy, or EST for short. In this practice, patients would have strong currents of electricity pass through their brains to induce seizures. Even though it caused amnesia and suicidal tendencies, it was still regarded as a miracle cure due to the mistaken belief that schizophrenia and seizures could not exist at the same time. In this book, however, EST is used as a punishment, rather than the miracle cure psychologists thought it was. Kye Emond describes this punishment, its threat, and life in constant fear of it, in amazingly convincing detail for someone who's never gone through the process. This believable description, alongside the simplistic, meandering writing style, reminiscent of the delusional perspective character's thoughts, really pulls you into the story, making you feel like one of the patients, awaiting your turn in the shock shop. Right from the start, you know this book isn't going to be normal. It starts with one of the perspective character, Bromden's, hallucinations. The hospital aides he thinks of as the Black Boys are out in the hallway committing sex acts when the head nurse comes in. When she sees them, she begins to swell up to the size of a tractor, exposing all the machinery inside of her. She charges at the Black Boys, who start stabbing her with their brooms, but then some patients walk out into the hallway and the hallucination ends, with the nurse shrinking back down to her normal size. Bromden is then caught by the Black Boys in order to be shaved, but this causes Bromden to panic due to his belief that the shaver is a robotic probe, and he blanks out from fear. As he does so, he breaks the fourth wall, telling us that everything he shows us is the truth, even if it didn't happen. After this unusual start, a new patient, Randall Patrick McMurphy, is introduced, and he's different. Instead of hiding from his own shadow, he strolls straight into the room. Instead of ignoring all the other patients, he walks up to them and shakes their hands. Instead of submitting to the Black Boys' medical probes, he makes fun of them, and instead of trying to avoid notice, he laughs. This newcomer, who doesn't seem afraid, is so interesting to the perpetually terrified patients that even Bromden starts to actively fight off his hallucinations in order to see what happens. Unfortunately for McMurphy, the head nurse picks up on his difference and identifies him as a threat to her totalitarian regime. She makes it her goal to break him and return her ward to its usual terrified state. Unfortunately for the nurse, McMurphy picks up on this terrified state as the patients call themselves rabbits and help her systematically bully others. Enraged by what she's done to the spirits of others, McMurphy makes it his goal to break her. As time goes on, we see McMurphy spar constantly with the nurse, dragging all the patients out of their apathy and delusions through sheer force of will. He continues to fight for the patients, even as it begins to put him at risk, finally going far enough for the nurse to be allowed to give him EST. Even after repeated treatments of EST, McMurphy keeps up his fight, refusing to stop laughing and getting the best out of life. Seeing that their idol can't be cowed, all of the other patients only become braver, standing up for themselves and no longer just relying on McMurphy to fight for them. Despite his outside jolly demeanor though, McMurphy still shows signs of depression, induced by EST and his knowledge that he's trading his own freedom for that of the patients. None of the patients but Bromden notice this, however, and they all continue to be bolstered by his apparent lack of fear. In a final climax, which I won't spoil for anyone watching this, McMurphy proves once and for all that he isn't just the careless gambler that he pretends to be, but that he actually, truly cares for others, and stands up for those who can't or won't stand up for themselves, no matter the cost. Seeing McMurphy's character be developed and fleshed out is one of the best parts of the book. He's introduced to us as a careless gambling psychopath whose main concern is himself. He constantly comes up with plans to cheat or gamble people out of their money, and appears to have no concerns about anything else. The first time we get a glimpse of something other than this is when he swears to break the nurse by the end of the week, after seeing what she's done to the other patient's spirits. Even then, however, he could just be motivated by his love for freedom. The nurse is taking that away from him after all. This theory actually seems to be confirmed when he starts behaving properly so that the nurse will let him leave halfway through the book. It seems like he didn't actually care about the patients and was just having fun messing with the nurse. This all changes when he learns that most of the patients are at the asylum by choice. Knowing that they aren't forced to stay, but are choosing to stay because they believe themselves too weak to go into the real world, McMurphy's entire demeanor changes, and he resolves to fight until every last one of them remembers that life doesn't have to be terrible, and makes the choice to leave for themselves. Even then, right until the end, there's still some doubts about his intentions. He continues to win money off of the others, even as he helps them. His true character is finally exposed, however, in the climax, when he puts everything on the line for his fellow patients. The story of McMurphy's bravery and the excitement of the patients would be hard not to love. Seeing the once oppressed defeat their oppressor is a heartwarming story no matter how it's told, and believe me, this one is told weirdly. The story being told from the perspective of one of the more insane characters is a very interesting stylistic choice. It, most of the time, makes it very confusing, and you can never really tell what's real and what isn't. Like, for example, there's these constant references to this guy with his hands nailed to the wall, even when Bromden seems like most sane. Despite this, I think this choice really completes the book, helping you see why the patients refuse to do anything for themselves. Unfortunately, there are a few parts of the book that do give you pause nowadays, like bits of racism, but overall, I really do think that anyone who reads this book will cheer along with the patients at catching a big fish, cry alongside them when people die, and love this book, no matter its flaws. I know I did.
Okay, so the video I made was about 2 minutes too long, and I didn't really want to refilm the whole thing, so I just kind of sped up the whole video so that it fit within the 5 minute area. So please ignore the sped up voices, and also if you want like the full long version that's kind of more normal, then tell me.
Miracle cure, said blah. It amazingly. Writing style. Ken Kesey. Ken Kesey. Yeah. Nurse. Dragging. Really? Really? Stylistic choice. Pet. Stylistic. 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 Stylistic.
Very interesting stylistic